Hey there, future novelists. I hear some of you out there are checking out MUSA's literary challenges,
Nice.
which is awesome.
Yeah?
And today we're going to kind of focus in on one genre in particular that's all about, bending reality, science fiction.
That's a good one.
Yeah, so get ready to go from just reading sci-fi to maybe writing it.
Yeah, we're going to give you a little bit of a peek behind the curtain today.
That's right, we're going deep.
It's such a cool genre, Science fiction. It really lets us explore these what-if questions
Right.
about the future of, well, everything, really.
Yeah.
Science, tech, even society, like what does it even mean to be human?
Right.
All that. Big questions. And that's, I think that's powerful stuff for anyone, really, whether you're writing it or reading it.
Totally. Okay, so before we get into, all the technical stuff, let's just have a little fun.
Okay.
I'm curious, when I say science fiction, what's the first thing that pops into your mind?
Ooh, I bet you it's spaceships for a lot of people.
Probably.
Or maybe, like, aliens, That classic encounter.
Yeah, totally. But what's really interesting is that our source material is saying that science fiction is, less about the gadgets and more about how change impacts humanity. It's about the ripple effect, whether that's from science, technology, or even, social shifts.
Oh, that's a good point. And you know what? A perfect example is Star Wars.
Oh, good one.
Yeah, the lightsabers, sure, they're cool.
Very cool.
But the real heart of the story, it's about rebellion, It's about fighting for what you believe in.
Yeah.
And it's that human element, I think, that makes it resonate with people.
Totally. It's not just about cool tech. It's about, the people who use it and how it changes them.
Exactly.
So how do we take that and then build a whole sci-fi world around it? Our source talks about this thing called world building.
Ooh, yes.
Which sounds pretty intense.
It is intense, but it's also super exciting. World building, what it really means is that you're constructing this reality that feels real. You're not just kind of slapping on this, futuristic veneer,
Right.
This world has to have its own internal logic. It has to be consistent. Everything's got to connect.
So, we can't just have flying cars without also thinking about, air traffic laws.
Exactly. And our source material actually breaks it down into 3 core elements. Technology, society, and the environment.
Okay.
And these are all intertwined. They all influence each other.
So let's break those down. First up, technology. The source mentions that even, super advanced technology, it should have limitations and consequences. So we can't have these, magical devices that solve everything with 0 downsides.
Well, even in our world, thinking about it, every invention, it comes with these trade-offs, right? So let's say, hypothetically, you invent teleportation.
Right.
Amazing, right? Instant travel anywhere.
Right.
But then what about, the energy that it would require? Or what if it malfunctions?
Oh, yeah.
And then, ethically, how do you control something that powerful?
Ooh, that escalated quickly.
Right.
But it makes sense.
It does.
That, every action has a reaction, even in a made-up world.
Exactly. And that leads us to the next element, society.
Yep.
How would our social structures, even just our beliefs, how would they change alongside these crazy new technologies? Would we even have governments if we could teleport anywhere? What about crime? Could you ever really stop it?
Wow, that's a whole other layer of complexity.
It is.
And I guess we can't forget about the environment either.
Right.
The source mentions how important that is, whether it's a pristine alien planet or, a post-apocalyptic Earth.
For sure. Think about the impact that climate change is having on us right now.
Yeah.
In the present. Now imagine that, amplified in the future.
Whoa.
So a good sci-fi writer has to think about all of that. How tech shapes society, how society interacts with the environment, and then how the environment influences everything else.
It's like this giant puzzle, but instead of pieces, you're fitting together, like whole systems.
That's a good way to put it.
But even with the coolest world, you still need people to live in it.
You do.
And our source talks a lot about character motivations. And I love how it really focuses on the fact that even in sci-fi, characters need to have desires and flaws that we can relate to.
Absolutely. We connect with characters on a human level.
Yeah.
Regardless of the setting, right? So their struggles, their triumphs, their relationships, all of that is what makes the story come alive.
So it's not just about, saving the galaxy. It's about why they're saving it.
Yes. What's driving them personally.
Yes, exactly. Now, science fiction, it lets us play with all different kinds of characters.
Yeah.
Humans, aliens, robots.
I have a lot of fun.
And the source points out how these non-human characters can be, really thought-provoking, right?
Oh, for sure.
Because they challenge our understanding of, like, what it even means to be human in the first place.
It's like you're looking in this distorted mirror.
Yeah.
You're seeing these reflections of ourselves, but they're just a little bit different.
I love that. Okay, before we get too deep into character creation, I want to hear about all those sci-fi subgenres because our source mentioned a whole bunch.
Oh, yeah.
Like hard sci-fi, cyberpunk, space opera. It's like a candy store of possibilities.
Don't forget post-apocalyptic.
Ooh, right?
Each subgenre has this unique flavor. Like hard sci-fi, you think The Martian. It's all about getting the science right.
Okay.
It's super focused on realism and detail.
I say.
And then there's cyberpunk, think Blade Runner, gritty urban landscapes, tech that's like fascinating and dangerous at the same time.
Oh, I'm a sucker for cyberpunk.
Right.
All that neon and existential angst.
It's good stuff.
Yes.
Yeah.
But what about like those big, epic space adventures? The ones with like galactic empires and laser battles and all that.
Oh, you're talking about space opera?
Yes.
Star Wars, Dune, stories that span entire galaxies and tackle these huge themes of good versus evil, destiny, the fate of civilizations.
Those are always fun.
Yeah.
Okay, so many choices. It's like picking your favorite ice cream flavor.
Yeah, right.
Speaking of choices, how do we actually go from like having an idea to putting words on the page?
That is the million-dollar question.
It is.
And our source actually emphasizes something that might surprise you.
Okay.
Research.
Really?
Especially when it comes to the science behind your story.
Wait, so even if it's all made up, we still have to do research?
Think of it this way. Even if you're, like, bending the rules of reality, you still need to understand the rules in the first place.
Okay.
You don't want to have, like, spaceships flying faster than light without at least trying to grasp the physics involved, right?
I see.
It just helps ground your ideas, and it honestly makes the world more believable for the reader.
Right. Okay, that makes sense. But how do we, like, strike that balance? I don't want my sci-fi story to turn into, like, a physics textbook.
Right, yeah. And you don't have to be a scientist to write good sci-fi, I promise.
Yeah.
But grasping some of those core principles, I think that makes all the difference.
Okay.
You don't need to know every equation, but understanding, like, the basic concepts allows you to, like, extrapolate and imagine those what-ifs in a way that feels plausible.
So it's like taking what we know now about, say, AI and pushing it forward.
Yes.
Even if we don't know exactly how it's going to evolve, we can still, like, imagine the possibilities based on what's happening now.
Exactly. You're taking these seeds of possibility and you're letting your creativity run wild. And you've got to remember that golden rule of storytelling. Show, don't tell.
Okay.
So instead of explaining how a futuristic gadget works,
Yeah.
weave it into the story through action, dialogue, all of that.
So instead of saying, like, the spaceship had a hyperdrive, I might describe, like, the characters feeling a jolt as they're warping through space, or, like, maybe show how time dilation affects them.
Exactly. You're immersing the reader in that experience.
Yeah.
You're not just, like, handing them this dry explanation.
Okay, cool.
And our source actually has some fun suggestions for practicing this.
Oh, nice.
Writing exercises that can really help you flex those sci-fi muscles.
I love a good writing prompt.
They do.
What kind of exercises are we talking about?
Well, one suggestion is to pick an everyday object,
Okay.
like your smartphone, and imagine how it might evolve over the next 100 years.
Okay.
Like, what crazy new features would it have?
Right.
How would it impact our lives?
Oh, that's a good one. I could
Yeah.
totally see smartphones, like, becoming these chips that are implanted in our brains.
Oh.
Which, honestly, maybe not that far off, right?
I know, it's getting closer and closer all the time.
Right.
Yeah, so you're already thinking like a sci-fi writer.
I'm trying.
And another really great exercise is to, like, create a timeline for your world. Like, mapping out all the key events
Yeah.
and the technological advancements that led to, like, the present of your story.
Right.
It's almost like being a historian for your own fictional universe.
I like that. It forces you to think about, like, cause and effect.
Yes.
About how each, like, invention or event ripples outward and changes society.
Yeah, exactly. It's like building this domino chain of innovation and consequence.
I love that. The domino chain. Okay, I'm digging this.
It's a good visual.
And as we explore those consequences, I feel like we also might bump into some, like, pretty big ethical and philosophical questions.
Oh, absolutely. And that's something that sci-fi really grapples with a lot. Our source touches on that too.
Yeah, like, should we create AI that surpasses human intelligence?
Yeah.
And if we do, like, what rights would those AI have? Those are huge questions.
They are huge. And science fiction, it gives us that space to explore those questions safely through storytelling.
Yeah.
It's like holding up this funhouse mirror to our own reality, but we're distorting it just enough to make us think differently.
So it's not just escapism then. It's a way to engage with like the real world, but through a different lens.
That's the beauty of it. And our source material points out how like all our contemporary concerns, like climate change, inequality, this rapid technological advancement that we're seeing, it's already influencing the direction of modern sci-fi.
That makes sense, like writers are inspired by the world around them.
Always.
So what trends are you seeing emerge in the genre? What has you excited?
Ooh, well, one really exciting trend is just this increasing diversity of voices in science fiction.
Right.
We're seeing so many more stories from like marginalized communities, right?
Right.
So we're seeing all these new perspectives. They're challenging traditional narratives, which is fantastic.
That's awesome. It's like opening up the genre to a whole new galaxy of ideas and experiences.
Exactly. And another trend is this like blurring of genre boundaries.
Okay.
So we're seeing sci-fi elements blended with like fantasy, horror, even romance.
Ooh.
Like, delicious genre fusion cuisine.
I love that. Okay, so there are tons of possibilities, which is exciting,
It is.
but also a little overwhelming, honestly.
Yeah, a little bit.
For those of us who are just starting out, what's the most important advice that our source offers?
I think the key takeaway is that writing science fiction, like any form of writing, it's a journey of discovery.
Okay.
It's about exploring, it's about experimenting, and it's about finding your own unique voice within this vast and ever-evolving genre.
Right.
So don't be afraid to try things, to break the rules a little bit, and to just make it your own.
That's inspiring. And for those who are ready to take the plunge, the source also mentions some helpful resources.
Yes, it does.
So what are those?
Well, it recommends keeping up with scientific publications just to stay informed about real-world advancements,
Right.
because that can spark all sorts of sci-fi ideas.
Yeah, for sure.
And then joining writing communities, I think that can be invaluable too.
Yeah.
You can connect with other sci-fi enthusiasts, you can get feedback, you can find support along your writing journey.
Makes sense. And of course, there's MUSA's literary challenges.
Yes.
Which is like a fantastic starting point.
Sure.
It's like having a personal writing coach in your pocket, guiding you through the process.
Absolutely. And the challenges offer prompts and guidelines to get those creative juices flowing.
Love that. And speaking of inspiration, as we start to wrap up this first part of our deep dive,
Oh, yeah.
I want to leave you all with one final thought,
Ooh, good.
and I'm going to let you take it away.
Awesome. Okay, so here's the thing.
I'm listening.
As we stand on the edge of all these incredible technological breakthroughs, science fiction, it becomes more relevant than ever. It's not just about predicting the future, it's about imagining all the possibilities, the choices that we face as a species.
Yeah. It's like sci-fi gives us a map of the road ahead.
Yeah.
Showing us all the potential forks and detours. And it reminds us that we actually have a say in which path we take.
Exactly. So, dear listener, as you kind of journey into these worlds of science fiction,
Right.
whether you're reading it or writing it, just remember that the future, it's not set in stone. It's a canvas waiting for your imagination to just fill it with color.
And who knows? Maybe one of you listening will be the next great sci-fi author, crafting stories that inspire and challenge generations to come.
Now, wouldn't that be amazing? And if you're feeling that spark of inspiration, remember to check out MUSA's literary challenges.
Yes, good plug.
It's a fantastic community for writers to support each other, share ideas, and just hone their craft.
Absolutely. It's the perfect launching pad for anyone who wants to dive deeper into the world of writing. And hey, even if you don't dream of becoming the next Isaac Asimov exploring the genre, it's a reward in itself.
It really is. Science fiction just stretches our minds.
Right.
It makes us question our assumptions, and it encourages us to dream bigger.
I love that.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay, so everyone go forth, embrace the wonder that is science fiction.
Yes.
And hey, maybe one day we'll be discussing your sci-fi masterpiece on the deep dive.
Oh, that'd be so cool.
Until then, keep those imaginations firing.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay, so
Yeah.
picking up where we left off, we were talking about how to actually get those sci-fi ideas from your brain onto the page.
Yeah, how do we make it real?
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
So the source had some pretty interesting advice on that. And one of the things that it kind of highlighted was the idea of outlining.
Okay.
And I know for some writers that sounds like super restrictive, you know?
Right, yeah, like killing the creativity.
Yeah, exactly. But when it comes to sci-fi especially, having a solid outline can really make a difference.
Okay, I'm curious, why is that?
Well, sci-fi often deals with these really complex worlds, right?
Right,
With all these interconnected systems and, characters and plot lines, and it can be easy to kind of lose track of things if you're not careful.
that makes sense.
Yeah, so having an outline, it's like having a roadmap.
Okay, so it helps you like stay on track and make sure everything is connected. Exactly. And it also helps you like spot any plot holes or inconsistencies early on, which can save you a lot of headaches later down the line.
Right, yeah, like you don't want to get halfway through your novel and realize that your time travel logic doesn't actually make sense.
Exactly. Been there, done that.
So what are some like practical tips for creating an effective outline for a sci-fi story? Like what should we include?
Well, the source actually recommends starting with a timeline, which kind of goes back to what we were talking about earlier with world building.
Right, mapping out those key events.
Exactly. So, you start by figuring out, like, what are the major historical events that have shaped your world? What are the, like, big technological breakthroughs, the social and political upheavals, all of that.
Okay, so it's like creating the history of your fictional universe.
Exactly. And once you have that timeline, you can start to layer in your character arcs and your plot points, and you can really see how they fit into the bigger picture.
Okay, I'm starting to see how that would be really helpful, like especially for keeping track of those cause and effect relationships, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like how did a particular invention lead to a social change? Or how did a war impact the development of a new technology? All of that stuff.
Right, it all ties together.
It does, it does. And speaking of tying things together, another thing that the source talks about is theme.
Okay.
And theme is, it's basically the underlying message or idea that you're trying to explore in your story.
Right, like the big questions you're grappling
Yeah,
with.
exactly. And in sci-fi, those themes can often be pretty, philosophical or thought-provoking.
Yeah, for sure. Like, what does it mean to be human in a world where technology is constantly evolving? Or, what are the ethical implications of genetic engineering? Stuff like that.
Exactly. And so weaving those themes into your outline can really help you create a story that's not just like entertaining, but also meaningful.
Right, it gives it that extra depth.
Exactly. And it helps ensure that your story, it's not just about cool gadgets and spaceships, but it actually has something to say about the world that we live in.
Right, and how those advancements might shape us as a species.
Exactly. And I think that's like one of the things that makes sci-fi so powerful,
Yeah.
It's this ability to like hold up a mirror to our own society and make us really think about like where we're headed and the choices that we're making.
It's like a warning, but also like an invitation to imagine something better.
I like that, yeah. A warning and an invitation.
Yeah.
So yeah, having a strong outline, it's not just about keeping your plot straight.
Right.
It's also about making sure that your story has that depth, that it's exploring those big ideas that really resonate with readers. Okay, yeah, so
Picking back up.
we were talking about how sci-fi can really hold up a mirror to society.
Right.
And make us think about these big questions.
Yeah.
And I think one of the most powerful ways that it does that is through the characters. Because in sci-fi, we can create characters that are like fundamentally different from us.
Yeah.
Whether they're, aliens or robots or even just humans who have been like augmented in some way.
Right.
And by exploring those differences, we can really start to understand what it means to be human,
I see.
Like, what are those core values and beliefs that define us as a species?
Yeah.
And how might those values be challenged or even like transformed in a future where technology has radically changed the way that we live?
That's a good point.
And, the source material actually talks about this idea of like the alien as a mirror. And it's this idea that by creating these alien characters, we can kind of step outside of our own human perspective
Okay.
and see ourselves from a whole new angle.
So like an outsider's perspective.
Exactly. And sometimes that can be really like uncomfortable,
Right.
Because it forces us to confront our own biases and assumptions.
Yeah. Right.
But it can also be incredibly enlightening,
Yeah.
Because it helps us to see ourselves more clearly.
I see. So it's like using these alien characters as a way to like reflect back on humanity.
Exactly. And I think that's like one of the things that makes sci-fi so compelling, It's not just about like cool gadgets and spaceships. It's about exploring these deep philosophical questions about what it means to be human.
I love that.
And I think that's something that's really resonating with readers today, you know?
Totally.
Because we're living in a time where technology is advancing so rapidly.
Right.
And we're constantly having to grapple with these new ethical and philosophical dilemmas.
Yeah, it feels like every day there's a new headline about AI or gene editing or something.
Right, exactly.
And it makes you really think about like where we're headed as a society.
Yeah.
And so sci-fi, it gives us this space to explore those questions, to imagine those possible futures.
It does. And I think that's why it's so important to have like a diverse range of voices in sci-fi too.
Yeah.
Because we need to be hearing from people from all different backgrounds and perspectives.
Right.
To get a really full picture of what those possible futures might look like.
That makes sense. Like
Yeah.
we need those different perspectives to challenge our assumptions.
Exactly, because if we only hear from, one group of people, then we're only going to get one version of the future.
And that's not the future that I want to live in.
Me neither.
So what advice would you give to aspiring sci-fi writers who are trying to like find their voice and contribute to this like ever-evolving conversation?
Ooh, that's a great question.
I tried.
I would say, first and foremost, just read
Okay.
widely, read everything you can get your hands on,
Yeah.
because the more you read, the more you'll start to understand the conventions of the genre.
Right. You kind of get a feel for it.
You do.
Yeah.
And you'll also start to see, like, what's been done before, what hasn't been done before.
What those gaps are.
Exactly. And then once you have a good understanding of, like, the landscape of sci-fi,
Yeah.
then I would say, just start writing.
Right. Like just get those words down.
Don't worry about, like, being perfect or writing the next great American novel.
Yeah, don't overthink it.
Just, like, let your imagination run wild and see what happens.
I love that.
And, the more you write, the more you'll start to develop your own unique voice and style.
So it's like a muscle. You got to exercise it.
It is. And don't be afraid to experiment,
Sure.
Like, try different subgenres, try different points of view, different writing styles.
Mix it up.
Yeah, see what works for you.
And don't be afraid to like break the rules a little bit, right?
Absolutely not. Because sometimes the most interesting stories come from those moments where you, like, step outside of the box and try something new.
And I think that's a great note to end on.
I do too.
Just that reminder to like keep experimenting, keep exploring, keep pushing those boundaries.
Yes.
And who knows? Maybe one day we'll be talking about your sci-fi masterpiece on the deep dive.
Oh, that would be amazing.
Yeah. Until then, keep those imaginations firing.
Yes.
Follow